All right, welcome everybody. I'm Rabbi Micah Streifer. I'm the director of La Asok, and I am honored and thrilled to be able to welcome Rabbi Dr. Dalia Marx to teach us today about Lag BaOmer, a fiery celebration. Rabbi Marx is the Aaron D. Panken Professor of Liturgy and Midrash at Hebrew Union College's Taube family campus in Jerusalem, where all Reform rabbis and cantors must pass through at least for 1 year.
Mhm.
She also teaches in various academic institutions in Israel and in Europe. She is a 10th generation Jerusalemite who earned her doctorate at the Hebrew University and her rabbinic ordination at Hebrew Union College in Jerusalem and Cincinnati in 2002. She's involved in various research projects and is active in promoting liberal Judaism in Israel. Rabbi Marx, just to mention a couple of her works, is the lead editor of the Israeli Reform siddur, which is called Tfillat HaAdam, which was published about 6 years ago. She's also the author of a number of books, including the one that she'll be referencing or teaching from today, which is called From Time to Time Journeys in the Jewish Calendar. And I just want to mention that we're grateful to, first of all, we're grateful to the Hebrew Union College for their partnership in promoting this program. We're also grateful to those of you who made a contribution to La Asok when you registered for this program. And if you'd still like to do so, I'll put a link into the chat in a moment. And finally, we're grateful to the CCAR Press, who published Rabbi Marx's book, for offering us an exclusive 20% discount on From Time to Time. So I'm going to put into the chat in just a moment the discount code if you'd like to get the book that Rabbi Marx will be teaching from here. So let's say the blessing for study together. I'm going to share my screen so that we can join together in this blessing. And I would invite you, if you feel comfortable, to unmute for this moment so that we can bless this act of study together. Then we'll turn things over to Rabbi Marx. Please join me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed is the eternal source of the universe, whose mitzvot, whose commandments bring us holiness, and who commands us to immerse or engage in words of Torah. Rabbi Dalia Marx, take it away.
Shalom, everyone. It's wonderful to be with you tonight or this afternoon for you. Here in Jerusalem, it's already dark. And I have to remind my husband to close all the windows because very, very soon we're going to start having the bonfires, the special fires people light for Lag BaOmer. We're going to talk a little bit about that too. So it's very special for me to meet with you here, wherever you are. And I already read in the chat about the different places where you are. And it's wonderful to be together and to study together. These are not the easiest days for Jews in the world. That's why it's especially nice to be together. I have a special passion for the Jewish time, for the Jewish year cycle, for the festivals. I think there's such a great wisdom in the way our year cycle is constructed, and this is why I wrote this book that Rabbi Streifer already reminded you from time to time, journeys in the Jewish calendar. And I think this is how we perceive our reality. We perceive our reality, we understand our life through time. We move through time that is cyclical, the cycle of the day, the cycle of the week, the cycle of the month, the cycle of the year, but also the linear time, our historical time. We were all born at a certain moment and we grow, and time is also a line. And if I mesh these two types of time, the linear time and the circular time, the repetitive time, I get this beautiful spiral. So whenever I think about our festivals, I think about something that comes back every year, but I also think it is also an opportunity for me, for all of us, to reflect on our lives, to reflect on our history, on our stories, on our families. Yeah, if I think about Passover, I think about the first Passover that I remember in my life, the first Seder night that I remember, my grandfather, my grandmother, people who were with me are not with me anymore. And I think about the way I was as a little child And then as a teenager, when I had my first boyfriend, when I went to military service, because in Israel we all have to go to military service, when I was a young mother, where was I during the COVID year? Where was I last year? Who do I want to be with this year or next year? So this repetitive nature of time allows us to reflect on where we are and how we are. And this is why I have such a strong passion for exploring and thinking about the Jewish festivals. Now, today we're going to talk about a special festival, Lag BaOmer. And Rabbi Streifer, would you please share the poll that we prepared with you, because we wanted to see
I'll
what is
try.
what is your relationship with Lag BaOmer? Who celebrated it, who celebrates it regularly, who never heard about it. Definitely a special celebration that that is not really part of the historic rhythm of our festivals, or with the cycle of the seasons, or with the cycle of the agricultural life in Israel. So here you have the poll, so you feel free to fill it. Celebrate it every year, celebrated it before, Lag BaOmer what? So I think already we see some people responding to it. So let's see what's the story here. Lag BaOmer is special also because it's the name of the festival is also is the date itself. So let's see what we have here. Celebrate it every year, we have 20%. Celebrated it before, 20%. Lag BaOmer what? 60% or 55% now. Yeah, so most people have not heard about it, which is not surprising. This is a very young festival. It's a young festival because it does not appear in our Torah. It does not appear in our Tanakh, in our Bible at all. It does not appear in classical rabbinic literature. Does not appear in early medieval literature. And so it's a question: what is this celebration? How did it came to be? What are the special narratives about Lag BaOmer? And my final question to you, because as I will show you, you will see that some of the narratives of these festivals are somewhat problematic. What can we do with this celebration in the future? What's the narrative? What should be the content of Lag BaOmer? So first of all, I put below my website, my personal website. You can find all kinds of videos and recordings and sessions. A lot of it is in Hebrew, but some of it is also in English. So feel free to enter www.dalia-marx.com. I don't sell anything there. It's just like a library that I share all kinds of stuff with people. So here is a thank you AI for creating this for me this morning. I can think of Lag BaOmer as a tale of two Simons, of two Shimonim. Who are these two Shimonim? You see, you have two men here. No, just two male people, about the same age, who lived about the same time in the land of Israel, in the Galilee, and they were very, very different. Although both of their names was Shimon. One of them was Shimon Bar Kochva, and the other was Shimon Bar Yochai. Shimon Bar Yochai was a great Torah scholar or great learner, and according to some opinions, also a great ancestor of Jewish mysticism. Shimon Bar Kochva was a military icon, if I may call it this way, and he was the head and the leader of what is called the Bar Kochva revolt against the Romans. They were very different. You cannot think about two men that were as different as these two. But at the same time, as I said before, both of their names were Shimon. Both of them lived in the Galilee. Both of them hid in caves. Yeah, Bar Kochva in order to ambush the Romans and Bar Yochai in order to study Torah. Both of them are closely connected with fire, and both of them hated Romans. Yeah, just to remind you, we're in the 2nd century in the land of Israel, and the ruler is the Roman Empire, who gave a lot of troubles to the Jews. The temple was destroyed in year one in 70 Common Era, but about 70 years after that, in 132, 133, Shimon Bar Kokhba led a revolt against the Romans. For a moment, it looked like it's succeeding, but then the revolt was subdued very, very violently. That was the closest thing Jewish ever experienced that is similar in a way. I won't say it lightly, but it's similar in a way to the Holocaust. Yeah, 1/3 of the Jewish people was murdered by the Romans. So eventually this revolt was not a very successful one. And that kind of took the Jews did not want to revolt against their leaders anymore, because they understood how devastating this can be. But in many ways, Lag BaOmer, this celebration that we are beginning tonight, in Israel it's already begun, for you it will begin in a few hours, has to do with these two personalities, and has to do with many, many generations after they lived. If you went to, in time tunnel, whatever, you went back to the 2nd century and met one of them and told them, oh, you have your Lag BaOmer happens tonight, they're not going to know what you're talking about. So this is a celebration that started many, many years afterwards. And let us explore a little bit the celebration of Lag BaOmer, where it comes from, what is it, and what can we do with it. So this is a diagram actually from my book. This is the chart of the Jewish year. And we know that the Jewish year is actually constructed as, these layered cakes. So the basic layer is the festivals from the Torah. And then we have another layer of festivals that the rabbis added to our calendar. I'm talking about Hanukkah, I'm talking about Purim, I'm talking about, although Purim is from the Bible, but it's not from the Torah. I'm talking about special dates like Tu B'Shvat and Tu B'Av. And then we're talking about medieval additions to the celebration. And then we can talk about modern festivities, modern days. Lag BaOmer was added very, very late. But in order for us to understand what Lag BaOmer is, let us consult the name first. So Lag has to do with two letters, Lamed and Gimel. And the numerical value of these letters is 33. So we are talking about the 33rd day of the Omer. Let us talk in a second what is the Omer, and this is the date. This is the date. Today it's the 33rd day of the counting of the Omer. Just a quick word about the counting of the Omer. We see in the book of Leviticus, actually, what a nice serendipity. That was our Torah portion last week. It says that it is our duty to count from the day on which you bring the sheaf of elevation offering, the day after the Sabbath. It's a big debate. What does it actually mean, the day after the Sabbath? But we're not going there right now. You shall count off 7 weeks. They must be complete. Count until the day after the 7 week, 50 days, then you shall bring an offering of new grain to the Eternal. So what are we talking about? A day after a festival, a celebration called the Omer, in which the Jews had to bring bring in a very festive way a sheaf of barley, that symbolizes, this is right after Pesach, after the first day of Pesach. This is how the rabbis understood it, at least. And that celebrates the beginning of the harvest of barley. And then we should count 7 weeks. 7 times 7, that's 49. And the following day is the festival that we call Shavuot, right? So we're right now in the middle of the counting of the Omer. If you look in the Torah text, it doesn't tell you what should be the nature of the days of the counting of the Omer. It has a very clear agricultural meaning, because we're talking about a society that was primarily agricultural. People worked their fields. So they started with a harvest of barley on Pesach, the end of the first day of Pesach, and it took them all the way to the counting to the celebration of Shavuot, that symbolizes the beginning of the harvest of wheat. What's the difference between barley and wheat? So first of all, barley ripens faster, but also barley is a more coarse kind of grain. Usually you give it to animals. It's not, today we have all these fancy breads, but in antiquity, people didn't, like, it was a food for animals or for very poor people. And wheat was the grain that was considered very fine and good to consume. So we have these 7 weeks preparing us from the day that marks the Exodus from Egypt, us leaving the house of bondage, all the way to Shavuot. That is also Shavuot, the festival of weeks, is also the festival in which we celebrate the reception of the law, Matan Torah. According to our tradition, we reached Mount Sinai and received the Torah on Shavuot. So in a way, this is a preparation between for us to prepare our hearts and our minds to receive the Torah. And I find it especially nice to talk about it at La'asok, which is all about learning Torah. So it's about this period of time, especially these 7 weeks, is the preparation we have to the reception of the Torah on Mount Sinai. If I move on, yes, this is this can be understood. Yeah, this diagram, which I like very much, shows us the beginning of the process. We're at the bottom of the mountain, as it were. That's, you see, the matzah bread. It takes us all the way to the mountain, to Mount Sinai, and to the reception of the Torah. Yeah. This little diagram also marks the Lag BaOmer, the 33rd day of the Omer, although it does not appear, as we said, it does not appear in the Torah or the Mishnah or later. What happens later is that the time of the counting of the Omer sort of acquires a somber, sadder meaning that was not there before. And it says, if you look at this citation I brought you here from tractate Eduyot in the Mishnah, it says, by the way, you have the Hebrew on the left side. Those of you who speak Hebrew can compare. I'm going to read it in English, but you have the Hebrew text. So the judgment of the wicked in Gehenom, the equivalent of hell, it's a big thing because we don't have a specific concept of the afterlife, definitely not in the Mishnah. But here you have it here. So the judgment of the wicked in Gehenom continues 12 months, and then it gives you a proof text. But there's one rabbi, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, who says it lasts from Passover to Shavuot. And he also gives you a proof text for that. From Passover to Shavuot, that's exactly the time of the counting of the Omer. These are the 7 weeks, 7 times 7, these 49 days. So according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, this is a time where the wicked ones are judged in hell. Excuse me just a I'm sorry. So you already see that there's something that the rabbis, or at least some rabbis, understood difficult or distressing or mournful or scary about these 7 weeks. And it goes on in the Talmud because in the Talmud, in Tractate Yevamot, we hear about Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva is one of the greatest rabbis in early rabbinic literature. He was also the rabbis of both Simeons, both Shimonim that we mentioned before. And it says about him that he had 12,000 pairs of students from Gevat to Antipatris. 12,000 pairs, that's a lot of students, a lot of disciples. Of course, it's probably a typological number just to make it look round. He had many students, he had many disciples. And then it says, and they all died in one period. Terrible. So many disciples, so many students, and all of them perish, all of them die in one period, beferek echad, as it says in Hebrew. And why was that? Because they did not treat each other with respect. Yeah, they did not treat each other with respect, and therefore they all died. And the world was desolate because there was no more beautiful study of Torah across the country. All of these disciples of Rabbi Akiva perished. I skipped a little. And then it says, because until now, it's nothing to do with the time that we're talking about, the time of the Omer, the counting of the Omer. And then it says, it is taught that all of them died from Passover until Shavuot. So now we hear this one period was these 7 weeks between Passover and Shavuot. This is exactly the time of the counting of the Omer that all of these disciples died. No hint in the history, right? There's no hint that this actually happened, but this is what the rabbis are telling us. And then one rabbi, Rav Chama Bar Abba, says, or some say it was actually Rabbi Chanina Chia Bar Avin, they all died a bad death. What does it mean they all died a bad death? I mean, I don't know, is there a good death? I'm not sure. There is a good death, but actually, I guess there is a good death. If someone dies at good, ripe age with his family or her family, their family around them, it shouldn't be, I mean, that can, death can be not traumatic or tragic. Here they say that they all died a bad death. And the Talmud asks, what do you mean by that? What is it? What is this bad death? And the answer by Rav Nachman is askara. Askara can be a name of a disease, but it can also be a code name for something else. Askara in Arabic, maybe one of you speaks a little bit Arabic. If you know Arabic, askara has to do with military. So maybe it refers secretly to the fact that these disciples died by sword in a military conflict. Maybe they all died in the Bar Kokhba revolt. So far we're talking about this period of time, the Omer, between Passover and Shavuot. We see that the Torah is very neutral about it. It doesn't say it's a happy time, a sad time, a somber time, a difficult time, a scary time, but the rabbis are starting to impose, to bring us difficult notions, difficult tones to this time of the year. I'm fast forwarding more. If the Talmud can be dated, this text can be dated to the 5th century or maybe a little bit later. Here we are in Babylon in the 19th century, and we have a response, a rabbinic response, a halachic response by a Rav Natronai Gaon, was the head of one of the greatest yeshivas, the greatest houses of study in Babylon. It's called Sura. And he says the following: regarding your question as to why we do not betroth, mekadshim, or marry, consign between Passover and Atzeret and Shavuot, and whether this is due to a formal prohibition or not. So from this we learn, from the answer we learn that someone asking, why don't we get married And why don't we have engagement or betrothal during this time of the year? We don't know. We don't have earlier material that tells us people didn't get married on this time. But now we hear from this that this was a time that people did not get married. There were no special happy occasions. We know until today a lot of people don't shave themselves, don't get shaved, don't get a haircut, don't people are not engaged in big parties. What's the story? And someone asks, we don't know who it was, but someone asks Rav Natronai, what is this thing about the custom not to get married in the time of the Omer counting between Passover and Shavuot? And the answer is no, that this is not due to a prohibition, but rather due to a custom of mourning, or in Hebrew, minhag avelut. For thus the sages say, Rabbi Akiva, here you have the tradition that we just read from the Talmud. Rabbi Akiva had 12,000 pairs of students, and they all died between Passover and Shavuot because they did not treat each other with respect. And from that time onwards, the early generations adopted the custom not to marry during these days. Interestingly enough, especially in Ashkenaz, in the European world, this was especially a harsh time at the end of the 11th century onwards, because this was the time where the Crusaders started their journeys to the Holy Land to redeem it, as it were, from the heathens, and the heathens were the Muslims. So when they were on their way to the Holy Land from Europe, in springtime, it's a good time to travel after the winter. They wanted to collect a few more mitzvahs, as it were, and to convert the Jews they met along the way. Yeah, so we're talking about the communities in northern France, for example, in Strasbourg, and in the Rhineland, Worms, Mainz, Speyer. And we hear about terrible, terrible massacres. The word pogrom did not exist by then, but we hear about terrible, terrible massacres because the Jews did not want to convert. Many of them did convert to Christianity, but unwillingly, and some of them kept their Judaism secretly. So this was the time where it happened, the time of spring, the springtime between Passover and Shavuot. And in Ashkenaz, in Germany and northern France, this was a time of great distress and sadness. I'm going back to our PowerPoint, and I'm fast forwarding again. You see, until now, we're already had, 5 or 6 slides. We talk about the Omer, we talk about these 7 weeks. We haven't mentioned Lag BaOmer, which is the 33rd day of the counting of the Omer. And we don't hear about it until really late. And in an ancient religion like Judaism, the 12th or 13th centuries is kind of late. And we hear about Lag BaOmer for the first time, at least this is what I managed to find, in a book called Hamanhig, by Rabbi Avraham ben Natan Hayarchi, who lived in a city called Lunel in Provence. And he says, it is not a custom to get married between Passover and Shavuot, but it is a custom in France, in Provence, to get married from Lag BaOmer, the 33rd day of the counting of the Omer. And I heard from Rabbi Zrachia of Girona, that's Spain, that he found in an old book from Spain that the disciples of Rabbi Akiva died from Passover to Shavuot, from Passover to the pros of Shavuot, not of Shavuot to Shavuot, but to pros of Shavuot. And what is pros? Pros is half, and the half is the 15 days before Shavuot. Don't ask me how 15 is half of 49, but he counts this day as Lag BaOmer, the 33rd day of the counting of the Omer. On that day, the death of the disciples of Rabbi Akiva stopped. So we can seize the customs of mourning and not getting married and not betrothing and not getting haircuts and having parties, etc. So in a way, Lag BaOmer symbolizes a stop between the very mournful period and the rest of the time. And there's a difference between Ashkenazic and Sephardi in that case, because in the Ashkenazic world, you stop for one day and you have a lot of weddings normally on Lag BaOmer, and people kind of celebrate and do things, and then they go back to the mourning period until the end of the counting of the Omer. In the Sephardic world, they wait until Lag BaOmer is finished, and then they kind of cease, they stop all the mourning customs. All right, so this leads us to Lag BaOmer. So all this long introduction is just to bring us to the day of Lag BaOmer and how we came across it. Is there any question or something to ask or to add at this moment?
Rabbi, there was a question in the chat saying, somebody said, I've heard each week of the Omer corresponds to one of the 7 species. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yes, the number 7, as you know, is very, this is not exactly our topic, but let's just say a quick word about that. And the number 7 invites us to think about things that are 7. So we have the 7 main Kabbalistic sfirot, the 7 lower sfirot. Each one of the weeks is correspond to one of the sfirah, and each one of the days is also correspond to one of the sfirah, the Kabbalistic eminence or aspects of the divine. And also the 7 species, and also things kind of correspond when you have 7, especially if you have 7 times 7. So yes, absolutely, that's something that that we have. All right, can we? Yudi, did you want to say something?
Yes, thank you. I wanted to ask: is the street in Israel? I recall one Rabbi Akiva street in Tel Aviv right now. Is that street named after that Rabbi Akiva?
Yes, absolutely. There were more than one Rabbi Akiva, but when you talk about the Rabbi Akiva, we're talking about this Rabbi Akiva who lived in the second century, and he was a martyr also. He died, he was murdered, assassinated by the
Yes.
Romans. Yeah, absolutely. So let me, if it's okay, is there any questions in the chat or something that I haven't seen?
Somebody asked, Vicky asked, if the students of Rabbi Akiva were not nice to each other, why mourn them? Are they not redeemable? But then I had responded, and you can tell me if you agree with my answer. I said I think it has to do with the hint that they died in the rebellion.
So that's definitely one thing. If we think that the kind of thing they died from, the askara, has to do with the military death, military-related death, that definitely can be the case. But we're not necessarily mourning them. We're mourning the cause that brought to their death, the fact that they were not nice to each other, they were not respectful to each other. It's not enough to study a lot of Torah. I live in Jerusalem, so there are a lot of people who study Torah around me, and not all of them are nice people or good people or decent people. Yeah, it's not enough to study Torah. You have to be a good person. So in a way, I think we're mourning the fact that people were not nice to each other. We're not necessarily mourning only the disciples of Rabbi Akiva. But that's an interesting question. I never thought about it this way. So thank you. All right, I'm going to continue. But if there's a question, of course, we can always stop and talk about that. So let us talk about the first Shimon, celebrating Shimon Bar Yochai and Jewish mysticism. According to the Jewish tradition, first of all, let me say that there's a very famous story about Shimon Bar Yochai, who hid in a cave. That's why I painted AI helped me to paint a cave next to him for 12 years with his son, and they studied Torah. And they just studied Torah, and they were all covered with sand. They were naked and covered with sand, and they were in a way just open like talking mouths. And they left. They went out of the sand and got dressed just to pray. So they don't they keep their clothes kind of in a good shape. And they were hiding from the Romans for 12 years. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai has a very important role in Jewish mysticism because according to a traditional tradition, he is the one who composed the book of Zohar, which is the most important mystical book in Judaism. It seems like it's it was ascribed to Shimon Bar Yochai, but it was composed much later. It was composed maybe in the 13th century or a little bit even later. And it can't be, it's very hard to believe that the book was composed and was kept as a secret for 13 centuries. But it's ascribed to him. And according to a tradition, he was born on Lag BaOmer, and he got married on Lag BaOmer, and most importantly, he died on Lag BaOmer. Yeah, remember, Judaism celebrates the day of the death of a person, not the birthday. The only person who has a birthday in the Hebrew Bible is Pharaoh, right, in the book of Genesis. Jews normally celebrate the day when a person dies, because this is a day where we can really appreciate everything that person did in the world. So many centuries later, after, and let's say that it began sort of with the Lurianic Kabbalah, Luria, who created a whole Kabbalistic system based on the book of Zohar, that started a celebration in the mountain of Meiron in the Galilee in Israel. Here you have a picture of such a celebration in the early 20th century. You can see that's very interesting. It's Jewish people, but not only Jewish people. You also see Muslim people, Arab people, and they were celebrating together. So in a way, it was not just a Jewish celebration, it was a Galilean celebration. And people came to Meiron and lit a big fire. And later it also became a celebration where children are initiated into the Torah. And when I say children, unfortunately, I only mean male children, not girls, not daughters, because in the Orthodox or ultra-Orthodox world, these are the people who marry to study Torah. And this is a very common custom to cut the child's hair for the first time. Think about these children. They're about 3 years old. They have these long hair, these long curly hair. And the father gives a special scissors to different distinguished people in the community, and they cut a little bit of hair of the child, and they only leave the face, the hair locks on the sides. So the child gets the shape of a Jew, and he will remain like this for the rest of his life. This is a picture from Meiron from a few years ago. Actually, a few years ago, there was a terrible tragedy that one of these stages collapsed, and 45 people, I think, people died on this. This is the most crowded event, the most crowded annual event in the state of Israel. Historically, nobody knows exactly how many people come, but it's more than 500,000. It's closer to 1 million, probably. Yeah. This year also, it's very, very limited and very confined because of the threats we have from our neighbors, but basically this is a very celebrated event, and of course it has or maybe not of course, but it has a clear gender separation. In this picture you see especially male people, and maybe if we have some time later I'll show you a little clip showing this celebration. Yeah, this is another celebration of Lag BaOmer, but in this case, this time it's in Jerusalem, in a neighborhood called Batei Rand, and you can see that the fire they lit. This is a very important part of the celebration, is the lighting of the fire, and you see the people around it. In many places, you just use olive oil to light the fire, not it has to be very confined, and it has to be very beautiful fire. You see the women are standing on the side, and the people are around the fire. So this is a celebration celebrating Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's merit as an icon or the bringer of Jewish mysticism into the world, whether it was an historical case or it was ascribed to him later. And that's the other Shimon, Shimon Bar Kochva. Bar Kochva in Hebrew, or actually in Aramaic, means the son of star, the starry sun. And Bar Kochva was a Zionist icon. The rabbis did not see him as a great figure, except for Rabbi Akiva. There were those who thought he will be the Messiah, but he actually brought a terrible disaster on the Jewish people, like very few leaders in the history of the Jewish people. And they called him Bar Kuzeva, which means the son of lie. You see, it sounds a little bit like Bar Kochva, Bar Kochva, Bar Kuzeva, but they actually meant that he was a son of lie. And he was kind of brought back from the darkness of history, from the oblivion of history, when Zionism began, because Zionism sort of brought back the aspect of Jewish nationalism, wanting to establish a state, which was what Bar Kochva did. He established a Jewish state that lasted about 2.5 years before the Romans completely wiped it out. And the Zionist leaders, the Zionist educators, looked for images of Jewish soldiers. So first and foremost, of course, they had the Maccabees, and that's how Hanukkah became a festival of the Maccabees, of the heroism of the Maccabees, but also Bar Kochva. And people kind of tend to forget the difficult nature of what Bar Kochva brought to us. But I thought it's interesting to see it, to see what it is. And these are coins from the Bar Kochva revolt. You can see on the left side, you have the shape of the temple in Jerusalem and the word Shimon on it. And on the other side, you have the 4 species. You have a lulav and you have an etrog, and it says Lecherut Yerushalayim for the ancient Hebrew text. It says Lecherut Yerushalayim for the freedom of Jerusalem. And this is a very common children's song, because Lag BaOmer is a children festival, right? This is a children festival because children are going there and they gather wood and they light big fires and they play with the bow and arrow. And this is a poem that was written by Levin Kipnis. It's a very famous composer of mostly children's song. And it says the following: a man lived in Israel. Bar Kochva was his name, a young and tall man with shining eyes. He was a hero. He called for freedom. Everyone loved him. He was a hero. One day there was a sad incident. What a sad incident. Bar Kochva was captured and put in a cage. How terrible was the cage? Inside was a roaring lion. When he saw Bar Kochva, the lion pounced the lion. But Bar Kochva was mighty and fearless. He quickly jumped on the lion, and as light as an eagle, he flew on the mountain and valleys. He winged in his hand a flag of freedom. Everyone applauded him. Bar Kochva, hooray, hooray. So I want to show you. I want to play to you for a second this song, so you can to kind of give you the taste of how this festival sounds like in Israel. Let me just share it for a moment. Tell me if you can hear it. Share sound. Yeah.
איש היה בישראל בר כוכבא שמו, איש צעיר גבה קומה עיני זוהר לו, הוא היה גיבור, הוא קרא לדרור, כל העם אבותו זה היה גיבור, גיבור, גיבור.
Yeah, so you get the feel of what it was, right? That is a children's song. This is basically as we said, a very children-oriented festival, maybe male children-oriented festival. And let us go back to our PowerPoint, and you can see that Bar Kochva is often associated with the lion, that he's subdued. Yeah, the lion, he was put in a cage, as the song said, and he was supposed to be torn to pieces by the lion, but the lion was mesmerized by his starry eyes and kind of became a little poodle, and Bar Kochva rode on him. Yeah, so in a way he represents in a way a little bit like the Messiah. The Messiah is associated with a white donkey, and Bar Kochva is associated with the lion. Yeah, the story about the lion and Bar Kochva is a very late one. It's probably from the 18th century, but it's a very common one. This is what our kindergarten teachers used to tell us all the time. So this is what I wanted to share with you about the two Shimons, right? The Shimon Bar Kochva that represents military power, physical power, victory, heroism, and Shimon Bar Yochai that represents Torah, that represents hiding in the tent of Torah, in the caves, studying the wisdom of our culture. These are two models. I don't know if they ever met. I wish I knew their wives. What did they think about their husbands' ways? But here, this is what we are. I wanted to mention very briefly another narrative that is sometimes associated with Lag BaOmer, and that's not a Jewish one. Around this time of the year, in May 1st, yeah, usually Lag BaOmer is around the beginning of the month of May, just as it is this year, there is a mythological festival in Europe, in especially in Germany, which is called Walpurgisnacht or Walpurgisnacht, and it's called after the 8th century Saint Walpurga or Walburga, depends on the name, and this is a celebration of the witches, of all kinds of satanic things going on that night, and here you have another picture of Walpurgisnacht from the 19th century, in here too, and it's supposed to be taking place on the Brocken Mountain that is in the Harzgebirge, Harz mountains in Germany. If you see, it's very small, but maybe you can see, it looks like flies, but it's actually witches riding on brooms. You see that? So maybe these celebrations that kind of mark the middle of the spring and going into the summer, that was celebrated in Europe, kind of gave the Jews the idea to celebrate something on that time of the year too. Maybe, I don't know, but it's around the same time. Going back to these two characters, my question is there another way to envision, to imagine Lag BaOmer? There are other things that happen on that day. For example, according to a Midrashic tradition, the flood in the time of Noah began on that day. There's another Midrashic tradition that says that Joshua died on this day, but maybe there's something else. When we think about fire, when we think about going out to the field, going out to nature, studying Torah, is there another story that we can envision or that we can imagine that can be fulfilling this day if we don't want to either or, talking about someone who closed himself from the world, went away from his home to study Torah and didn't do anything else, or a person who dedicated himself for military service that ended up in a very very difficult way. So I'm leaving it as an open question to all of us to think, what can it be, Lag BaOmer? Maybe we can say we can just not celebrate it and we can leave it like this. Maybe we can say we can learn about it, but maybe this is not the kind of festival that I would like to celebrate. And maybe we can say there's something about it. This is a celebration of fire. Maybe there's something else that we can think about. Maybe it shouldn't be the festival of fire. Maybe it can be something else. And let me just end with a Hasidic notion of Lag BaOmer, and this is a text by Rabbi Elimelech Shapira of Dinov, who said Lag BaOmer has to do with Lev Tov, good heart. How is it good heart? The word Lev, which means heart, in Gematria, in numerical value, is 32. So you're still in America, you're still on the 32nd day of the Omer, and whatever comes next during the counting of the Omer is 17, right? Because the counting of the Omer is 49 days, and this is the end of the 32nd day. You have 17 days left, and 17 in Gematria means Tov, which means good. So good heart. We're right in between a heart. Yeah, we just fulfill the heart, and the 70 days that remain to us in the counting of the Omer has to do with good, to seek good, to seek what is good, what is right, what is appropriate, what is apt in this world, and to do a tikkun, to work as much as we can to bring a tikkun all the way until we will merit to stand again in Sinai and receive the Torah again when the festival of Shavuot, the festival of the reception of the law, comes again. So this is what I wanted to share with you about Lag BaOmer. I know this is not a festival that many of us celebrate, but I think it can serve as a test case for how do we celebrate festivals? How do we envision days that are in our calendar? What can we do with them? How creative can we be? How innovative can we be when it comes to days that are in our year cycles? How they found their way there? What are the different meanings that were ascribed to them? And here we have two personalities from the second century that many centuries later were brought into the story. And what can we as contemporary Jews bring into the story of Lag BaOmer and of our life in general? And this is an open question. I don't know if we can answer it now, but at least we can kind of contemplate on it and think about it. And let's see if people want to say something or to add or to ask or disagree.
So if there are thoughts, please feel free to raise your hands. Rabbi Marx, there's a comment in the chat from Bob that says it takes earth, which is wood, fire, air, and water or smoke. It takes the four elements to have fire.
Wow, that's beautiful. But I think, Bob, it's interesting to think that we have different celebrations that each one of them concentrate on one of the four elements, right? So we have, of course, Lag BaOmer that concentrate on fire, and you say that the fire is composed of the four elements, and we have Hanukkah also has to do with fire, like lighting the candles of Hanukkah, although the candles are something that is more controlled and small, and not like the fire department in this country work extra time during Lag BaOmer because all these crazy children, burn whatever they can. But we also have other festivals. Yeah, for example, Shmini Atzeret has to do with water because we remember the libation of water on the altar in the time of the temple. So I thank you for bringing these four elements. Every time we use all of them, but some festivals are more inclined to one of them. So thank you very much for that. Anything else to add or to
I,
say?
I had a thought to share, unless others do, which is you issued an invitation for us to think about what Lag BaOmer could mean today, and I was thinking and I know you didn't talk much about it, but I really appreciate the Kabbalistic approach to the Omer, which is to say we're moving from the Red Sea to Sinai. We're sort of like moving through the midot, through our various character traits, trying to become our best selves. And I think we need stopping points. We need way stations along the way toward that. So I like the idea of Lag BaOmer as, although it's not exactly in the middle, but as a way of stopping and saying, what progress have I made so far? And I still have time. There's still time for me to get to Shavuot, to get to Sinai. And what more do I want to accomplish between now and the moment where I stand at Sinai?
Wow, I really like it. I really like it. And if we accept the Lev Tov explanation, the good heart, we completed the Lev and the heart, and now we are moving into the Tov. How can we be good? How can we be better? How can we make tikkun? As you said, Rabbi Streifer, we still have time until we stand again in Sinai, so we can do that tikkun. Hello, Rabbi Cantor, Jackie Marx. Thank you for this.
Any other thoughts to share, anybody? Well, this was wonderful. I want to say a huge thank you to Rabbi Dalia Marx. Rabbi Marx, do you have a closing thought or?
No, I just wanted to say that the book that you mentioned that I wrote, and as you said, the CCR were kind enough to publish. What we did now was one chapter of this book. There are about 100 of them, and it's based on the different month. And my job was to give as pluralist approach as possible. So I brought from different Jewish ethnicities, and I brought traditions from old and from new, from all kinds of denominations and thought. And I also had a point to bring as much as possible the voice of Jewish women, because we don't have a lot of Jewish women voices in our books. Not that it did not exist, it definitely existed, but women did not write their books, right? So a lot of things that were transmitted from mother to daughter, from grandmother to granddaughter, were lost to us. And I think this is to me is something that I feel very committed to bring women voices. So today we spoke basically about men, but throughout the book I try to promote women voices, because we are half of the population.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was lovely to be with you.
Thank you to Rabbi Marx. It's, by the way, everyone, it is a wonderful book. And it is the kind of book where you can just pick it up and read one essay or, sort of pick a selection from within a different holiday. We will send out tomorrow the recording of this session. It'll be on Lag BaOmer for those of us who are receiving it during the day here in North America. And that'll include the link for this, but also the link if you want to pick up the book. And Rabbi Marx, if you don't mind, there was a request for your slides. So if you don't mind sending me your slides so people can see the texts, I'll share those with the people in the group as well. And thanks again to Rabbi Marx for teaching us today. Thank you, everybody. And we wish you, if it's your first time celebrating a celebratory Lag BaOmer, if you're going to get a haircut or light a fire or contemplate your best self, no matter how you're marking this day. And we'll wish you a Chag Sameach and look forward to seeing everybody soon. Take care, everyone.
Bye bye. Toda.